Good morning. And good morning to all of you that are watching by live stream all around the world. It's an honor to have you here at our Faith Forum as we explore today the spirituality of hope. I want to begin with a question. When you find yourself in a difficult place, in a place of powerlessness, a place of darkness, where you feel that you're not really sure how you're going to keep moving on because the challenge seems so great, where do you find hope? What are the sources of hope and the spirituality of hope in life and in the Christian life in particular? It is perhaps the most fundamental of all questions. And today, we're going to take up that question. And we're going to do so with a community of friends who come to us from Thistle Farms. And before I introduce them, I'm going to allow this video to introduce what God is doing in the life of incredible people who have stepped forth to be beacons of hope. Let's show the video.
Thistle Farms residential program is called Magdalene. They're 2-year homes where women can stay for free without any authority living in the house. It's a simple model, but it's critical for survivors of trafficking, addiction, and prostitution to have both space and time to heal. We figured out when the women came that they were doing great work in their recovery and making restitution with the courts and their families. The problem was they were still dirt poor, and that's why we started Thistle Farms, the bath and body care company run by the women. We've also diversified the social enterprise. So we have this cafe, we have the studios, 480 retail outlets, and 18 global partners.
You know, I walked a 10-block radius for well over 20 years, and I could not find a way out. And I was just trapped. I had lost all hope.
I was in a dark place. I came from molestation. I came from running away at the age of 15 and found my way using drugs, and that took me for a whole loop. I became homeless. I've been arrested 87 times. I lost custody of my kids, and I was just lost and bitter, looking for hope.
The women who come into Thistle Farms share a universal story around sexual violence and assault that they've really carried on their individual backs. On average, the women that we serve are first raped between the ages of 7 and 11, and they hit the streets between the ages of 14 and 16 years old.
I used to use for 15 years. I stayed in one facility.
None of the women we serve in the community of Thistle Farms ended up on the streets by themselves. It takes a bunch of broken systems and communities that really roll out a red carpet for the women to find their way into being runaways, to being trafficked, to being addicted, to being jailed, to being prostituted. So it makes sense that it takes communities to welcome the women home and provide the resources and provide a place to restore all of us into a community together.
What's different about Magdalene is you don't have to pay $1 or anything when you first walk through the door.
They help me with all my needs, like hygiene, dental, food, clothes, a ride. They help me really get back on track.
It was very difficult to get a job because of my police background, and they hired me. They let me work the register and be accountable for money. They let me go to the bank. But they allow me the opportunity to develop job skills.
And they did not ask me, what did you do? They asked, what happened to you?
You made me cry. The best thing about my life is today is that I lost my kids, and so I have 4 grandkids, and so the things that I wasn't able to do for my kids, I'm able to do for my grandkids. Like go to the PTA meetings, show up for lunch, drop them off at school, just to hear them say, Nanny, can you help me with some homework? Even though I might not know, because I've been out of school for so long. And they love us till we're able to love ourselves.
For 20 years, we've been a witness to the truth that love is the most powerful force for social change in the world. It is that way because people want to hope with us. They want to do this work with us, and we welcome you to the circle.
Let us pray.
Oh, they were going to clap.
Gracious God, we give you thanks for the circle of hope and for the promise that love heals. May we this day be brought into that circle and join in this effort to bring hope and healing to the world. This we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen. It is the highest honor for me to be here on the stage with these incredible women. And I would love for you to meet Anika Rodgers, Mary Stuart Smart, who is a member of this parish, and Becca Stevens, who's the founder of Thistle Farms, and my adopted sister. Yay! Welcome. Anika, tell me about your story, about where did you grow up?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan. I had drugs in my system from my mother, and I was placed into the foster care system at a very young age. And from there, went from home to home, being molested in each home and not knowing the true meaning of love and family. And so at the age of 15, I ran away, and I was introduced to a big world that I didn't know anything about. Mm-hmm. God was not in the equation due to a lot of things that happened in my childhood. I was uncertain of a God that I heard people talking about, mm-hmm. you know. And so I hit the streets, and I had to do things that I didn't want to do, but I needed to survive out there on the streets. And I've been in a lot of dark places, and found myself being trafficked, homeless, having arrest history, and just uncertain on even why I was born, why was I created.
Mm-hmm. So how did you first get connected to Thistle Farms? How did that, and when you heard about it, did you believe it was true?
No. My last arrest, I was very bitter and hurt and just tired of being sick and tired, but didn't know a way out. And so I prayed to a God that I heard people talking about, but once again, I was unsure, and I just had a good talk. I'm like, okay, if it is a God, I need you right now, more than ever. And the God of my understanding gave me the courage to go to the counselor office where I was incarcerated and ask for help. You know, I went to her and said, I have no money. Only clothes I have is what I have in intake. But I'm willing, and I want some help. And so she told me about a rent-free 2-year program. And I'm like, yeah, right. You know, rent-free. Now, I've been to a lot of halfway houses where they charged me. And because I was unable to find jobs, I went back to my sugar daddy and went back to the streets to get the money just to pay for the halfway houses. And I'm like, rent-free? And she's like, yeah. So, I mean, what do I have to lose? And I wrote them. And ever since then, my life has not been the same at all.
Do you remember your first day at Thistle Farms, and do you remember meeting Becca?
Yes, yes. And she was barefooted. She was barefooted, and I mean, her spirit was so free. And when I met her, she didn't put God on me, but I can see the agape love that she carried in her spirit and in her demeanor, and it was so attractive to me. And she promoted it well, without words. And I saw in her action, and I was just like, I'm in the right place. So my journey of hope began by simply entrusting my life into people's hands that I did not know. And it has been an amazing journey ever since then. And thank you.
Anytime.
Anika, when you have been through what you've been through, and none of us can possibly understand and appreciate the pain that you've had in your life, how do you get to a place where you begin to say, I'm more than what people think I am. I'm more than maybe even what I have thought I am. I'm a child of God, and I'm gonna begin again. How do you find that ability to do that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Me and my sister Jovita, for the past 3 days, every morning when we get up, we go downstairs and get a cup of coffee, and it's just amazing about our conversations on the elevator about a God, a loving and caring God. And what I do know is that what I went through, I'm not alone, first of all. And the community of Thistle Farms, we share a universal story. And so that helps to not know that I'm not alone. And also, the things that I encountered, first of all, I was supposed to be dead, number one, or out of my mind, or in prison for committing a homicide, homicide. And because God, I see now that the things that I went through, and I'm not neither one of those things, God has carried me through. And he has took me out of bondage. And now it's like I can live. I can live, I can hope, I can dream, I can tell our story, and I can help the next woman that's out there who felt the same way I felt, and I'm able to connect with her on a deeper level because of my experience, strength, and hope. And the journey continues, and so that makes it worth living. Because I'm a survivor and not a victim. I've been a victim for so long. And God told me that he would turn my ashes into beauty. And here I sit.
You know, Anika, there are so many people that are out here today that they look pretty, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, and they really are, but they're real people, and they've got real things that are going on in their lives, and there are no answers. And one of the things that I'm struck by as a mentor of mine was a man named John Claypool, and he told the story about getting to the end of our rope, and he said, it's hard to get to the end of our rope, but God lives at the end of our ropes. And I'm struck by, as I listen to you, how it was very difficult for you because of the trauma that you had experienced to believe in a God, because it didn't, at least the God who takes care of everything didn't seem to be there and taking care of every single thing. But when you surrendered and began to move toward that fierce love that you felt inside you, that fierce belief that there was something more, that you seemed to link up with God and God linked up with you. Getting to the end it's so powerful, that how sometimes we have to get to the end before we see the beginning. What would you say to people who are in that place right now, and others maybe who look in the mirror every day and they say, I don't think I can do this with myself. I don't think I can do this with my child, or because of something that's happened to me in my life, I'm not going to be able to become what God has called me to do. Here we are listening to your story, and you're sharing this light and this love. What would you say to some of these folks who haven't been through a quarter of what you've been through, but who are going through very real things right now? What would you say to them?
Well, first, I want to say that I feel your pain. And yes, you may not have went through the exact things that I went through, but you do know what pain is. So that we do have in common. And my motto is, what didn't kill me can only make me stronger. So as long as God give us breath in our body each day, that is an opportunity to grow and to overcome and beat the odds.
Can I ask you one other question? Would you move here and be my mentor? Would you? Maybe. Yeah, I think they probably need you too.
Yeah, she's not going anywhere.
But I do have another family due to Mary Stuart. You are all my family. You are family, and so thank you for accepting me.
Well, Mary Stuart is a part of our family, part of your family. She is a member of our church. And Mary Stuart, you grew up here. Your mom and dad are right over there, right there. Yay! And you grew up and were baptized and grew up in this church, and here you are right now. And we're not only proud of you, but we're inspired by you. And I wonder if you could tell the story about how you met Becca and where you were when that happened.
Yes. Well, I had just graduated from Sewanee, and I was about to participate I was going to be working in Uganda and as a community health educator, and ended up being at the same organization with the same, underneath the same leader, Reverend Gideon by Magisha, and Becca and her family ended up there. And that's where we kind of met and got to know each other.
And tell us what you're doing now at Thistle Farms.
I am working on the marketing team, and I kind of focus on the product side of things and holidays and also those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. I know you probably wouldn't put these words to yourself, but you are a very courageous spiritual pioneer, stepping out in faith, taking a leap of faith to go to Uganda and to do many things that you've done in your life. I hope you know that. We're proud of you, but I'm curious what it was like for you to make that decision to go work at Thistle Farms, to know that you were going to be in a place where there had been and would be a lot of pain and a lot of recovery from pain. And I'm struck that I know there have been many times in my life when the darkness seemed so dark. And it wasn't that I didn't care, but I was afraid that if I got involved, that the darkness would be so dark that it would break my heart and that it would consume me, and therefore I pulled back because I didn't feel that if I could handle it, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Tell me about sort of how you, in your thinking, whether it was Uganda, whether it was something before that, and in particular at Thistle Farms, how you made that decision knowing that you would be going to a place where there'd be a lot of things that you'd have to see and feel that would be difficult.
I think that everything that we hear on the news and you read in articles, it can be really overwhelming, like the statistics and the numbers and the big topics like human trafficking and poverty and rape. And I think sometimes it's really easy just to kind of close the screen or close the book on it and separate yourself from it. But I think it's really easy to see when you're on the ground and you're constantly beside people like Anika who can show you that it is so, I mean, she was that statistic that is so big and scary and is in your backyard. And I think that's been really kind of what grounds you in it, is when you can see it and you can feel it and touch it and know that, you know, there is so much opportunity out there for small change, and it doesn't mean you have to solve the whole problem. It doesn't mean, you know, just because you want to help, you know, people who've been trafficked, doesn't mean that you have to stop human trafficking. And I think going into it with that attitude makes a big difference, kind of one person at a time.
That is such an important thing for us to hear, because I do think we sometimes see the magnitude of the problem itself and say, it's so big I can't do anything about it. It's too big for me. But I'm struck how there is this opportunity for each of us in the midst of the many things that we may be doing in our lives, whether it's going to school, starting off in life, having children, being retired, to say, a part of the portfolio of my life is going to be that thing that perhaps is missing right now, which is to get out of my own pain and get into the pain and the glory and the opportunity to love someone else and to take the risk of being changed by someone else. And I'm sort of curious. I know that you probably went into this with a lot of hope, because you've been inspired to believe that hope was possible, and you've known that hope. You've seen hope in lots of places. How has this changed you in some way? How long has it been now that you've been there?
A year and 5 months, I think.
So what surprises you? What surprises you now that you see, and what have you learned about yourself, and how do you feel that you've been changed?
Well, I think I've always had a passion for servitude, and I don't think that's going to go away. But I think Thistle Farms has kind of made me see servitude in a different light. So when a lot of people talk, they're serving people and they serve for someone. But at Thistle Farms, we serve alongside them. And I think that to me is an honor and a privilege, and something that separates it from the rest of anything I've ever done. And it's just so powerful.
I'm struck as I hear you say that so often when we think about doing something, we think about doing something for someone else. And what I hear you saying is, we're in this together. This is a community that we're journeying together. And that strikes me as a whole different way of thinking about what it means to be a Christian in the world. That rather than saying, how can I take my money, my time, and do something to help someone? How can I see the Imago Dei in me and in the other person, the image of God? And how can I say, the only difference is we've had different experiences and maybe different opportunities, but we're going to take on the world together. And I'm just so inspired that you do that. You're doing that now. And Becca?
Chip, I'm about to go crazy.
Are you?
Yes.
Why are you about to go crazy?
Because I have so many things that when they're talking, I wanted to say. I've never been quiet that long in my life.
Well,
my Lord.
Well, what do you want to say?
So much. I mean, just about how great not only are Anika and Mary Stuart, but this whole community who have been on this journey. Not just us or one person being on a journey with somebody, but you guys have been helping so much in the last couple of years, and we're so grateful. And also with us, there is Jovita, who comes from Dallas-Fort Worth area, who has written a book to youth and young women who are experiencing sexual assault. So the ministry keeps going and patterns stop. And what's so hopeful is you can take 5 or 6 women or the 3 women here, and you can impact hundreds and thousands of people and start changing it, and that's the hopeful part. And Lori, who came to us from Indiana, who got in the wrong car at 13, is experiencing a world like she never has, and says for the first time in her life she's looking in the mirror and seeing something beautiful. And that we recognize that in each other is huge. And I just think that's, to me at least, when they're speaking of it, the reason it's hopeful is it's exponential. And it grows like this, and you know, the gifts grow like this, and the community grows like this. And that's the part that I hope y'all know, that you are such a huge, huge part of that. I mean,
Yes.
from the small gifts and the big gifts, you have contributed to this community. And no, Anika cannot move here. That was good to get all that off of my mind.
Okay, do you feel better now?
Now I feel better.
Okay,
Go ahead,
good.
you can talk now.
Becca, let's talk about your story. Can we do that? Okay. This year we're talking about the soul, and we're trying to get in touch with our souls. We're talking about soul purpose. And what does it mean to find your soul? What does it mean to listen to your soul? Maybe rather than listening to the voices of the people out there, to begin to really tune in to that place where God speaks to us in our lives. And from that, to try to live authentically in the spirit of love and compassion for other people. I want to ask how it is in your journey. You've shared very openly that part of what set you on this journey is abuse that you experienced in your early life. And I want to ask you, similar to the question that I asked Anika, how is it that in the midst of dealing with abuse, and sexual abuse in particular, that your soul wasn't crushed? Or was it crushed?
No, I don't think you can kill hope in people. I mean, I've seen it over and over where you think you've just about beat somebody to death. And actually for me, I think it started with the death of my father before the abuse even began at the hands of a drunk driver. I think that was really the turning point in our family. And that's what a lot of times happens is early childhood trauma, it just escalates. You know, one begets another begets another. And so the sexual abuse was really just part of it. And for me, when I've seen women come through the program, you think, this is it. The world has done too much damage. This is too old. This is too hard. And then you ask people, you know, what are your hopes and dreams? And by God, they have them.
Yeah.
And they're still there. They're living in us. And that was always true for me, that I hoped that love could heal. I hoped that there were communities that were safe. I wanted that to be the story. You know, I didn't, you know, God was not the problem. There was a whole bunch of problems in my life, but God wasn't one of them. And I just knew I had to find a way out. That's what I was looking for. And I think that was the calling to go back for women on the streets, is that you can say it's the oldest form of abuse we know in the world, but there's got to be the way out for folks who are hoping like that. And I think the other thing is that, in my case, when I was in my kind of wild phase, I would say, let's just call it that. I like to call it that. I think it was the people who listened to me and not try to fix me or give me answers that were really the hope shots for me, or the people that I wanted to be with, that could be with me or hear my story and just hear it, and hear it with kind of soft eyes, that could hear it gently, that could hear it without a lot of, well, let me tell you what you need to do, or this is why you're awful, or this is why this is wrong. That really were the way back for me.
And you speak of one of the things that has sort of emerged as an expression of hope is compassion. What does compassion mean to you?
You know, just compassion to me means I can look at you and I can love you. And I'm not putting anything in between that. That when I look at you or walk with you with compassion, I love you. And there's no words before love or after that. You know, and I think it's easier than we think to take the brokenness that all of us have known in our lives and turn it into compassion with this space of saying, I can forgive a lot, I don't want anything to get between me and loving another person. So compassion becomes the beautiful far side of brokenness. I have tons of compassion for Anika, and I have tons of compassion for Mary Stuart, and I have tons of compassion for you. And they're all coming from the same place. They're not different.
So I want to come back to this question that I asked Anika, and I'd love to get all of you to respond to it. We are, as we listen, we hear the story of pain, we hear the story of embrace, we hear the story of walking alongside of people, we hear the story of love and love without judgment. And some of us are almost there, but there's still that little temptation to pull back, to say, here I am in church, I braved the snow, we got football later on today. This is going to be a big day.
There's a football game?
Yeah. Does Tennessee have a football team?
I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I live in a higher plane than that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, all right.
Well, you started that.
I know.
Okay.
I know. This is why we talk about brother, sister. So it's tempting to say, that was a really great Sunday school and I was inspired. Now I'm going to get back into my bubble.
Yeah.
That's very controlled, sort of, not really, but it's very, it's as sanitized as I can make it in this world that I'm trying to create that's safe and beautiful. What's the danger to the soul when we stay in our bubbles and we avoid dealing with the real problems of the world? Because one of the things that we are very committed to here at Christ Church is being a spiritual home. And we're never going to be a kind of suburban ghetto where we avoid the problems, okay? So we're always going to be a place that talks about real stuff, or we just shouldn't exist, all right? But there's still that danger that it doesn't get into our hearts. And so I want to ask, what's the danger of staying in our control bubble and not letting the real things of the world to touch us? What's the danger to the soul?
So a woman came to me. She lived in a suburb of Nashville that's very, very wealthy. And she said, I have been living safety first my whole life. So I live in a safe neighborhood, and my kids go to safe schools, and we drive safe cars, and we live in this very safe place. And I'm going crazy.
And you're going what?
And she's feeling, crazy. Like, there's got to be more, and I don't want to feel this kind of numbness, and I don't want to feel this. She was really struggling. I want to come sit in the circle at Thistle Farms. I want to be in your circle. And every day we start in a circle, and we light a candle, and everybody shares, and we start every day like that. I want to be in that circle where it feels a little unsafe. And at that point, we were near this church that's in her very, very wealthy neighborhood, and I said, well, let's go pray. Let's pray together about this and what it means for you to step out and what it's looking like for your heart. So we walk into the church, and there's no one in there, and it's quiet. It's this beautiful marble floor, and the altar is hand-carved with a canopy over it, and it's stunning. I'm like, she's like, that is so beautiful. And I'm like, let's just go up to the altar and pray. And there was a little rail where I guess you kneel in front of it. And I just stepped over it and offered her my hand to step over it so we could go just kneel at this beautiful altar. And when we stepped over the rail, we didn't realize that the whole altar was on an alarm system. And it started going, whoa, 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 whoa. And we were just panicked, and I was like, run! And the security guards came out. And she said that was really the whole answer to her prayer, how excited for just a minute she was. When the alarms went off and the security guards came out, and the security guards came out and was like, who alarms their altar? You know, we were called by God like the opposite of an altar call. Right. And she has been this faithful friend, and we've had laughs, and we've enjoyed, and she feels hope. And to step out of her comfort zone in such a dramatic answered prayer was, she said, one of the best things that ever happened in her life. And I think we miss out on some best things that can happen in our life when we shut ourselves off. That fun joy, that wonder in the world, that thing that makes us, like we're talking today, that spirituality of hope that's there. And it's like we are not just agents where we just have to take the news in. We can make the news.
Yes.
We can be a part of creating it. And the last thing I will say,
No, it's not. It's not going to be
the
the last thing.
promise on this, the last thing I'll say is I have met a lot of folks who get cynical. And I think that does a lot of damage to our soul. So that even when you read the Gospels or you go to church, you have this whatever. And I've seen priests with it, tons, 20, 25 years into priesthood. This work has made me grateful, not cynical. And for that, it makes me weepy. That's the part that makes me cry, is how grateful I am. And I would hate for somebody to miss out on just how grateful it is to be in community.
You know, Mary Stuart, I'm struck that you're in your sort of spiritual pioneer pilgrimage that you've been on in your life, that in the pursuit of hope, you've recognized that the pursuit of hope means that you have to go to the dark places, that it's not sort of all about flowers and unicorns, so to speak. That's that hope isn't, okay, I need hope, so I'm going to go to the hope store and buy hope. But it actually, hope, yeah, exactly. Hope store, yeah, that'd be good. So it's not like you go and just, I need hope, I go get hope, but hope means, as the Gospel of John talks about, it means going into the darkness. It means facing the darkness and realizing that the darkness, the light will not be overcome by the darkness. So what have been some of the brightest lights that you've seen at Thistle Farms? What have been some things that you've seen that have moved you so?
I think probably that Thistle Farms is, like she said, just a community, a sanctuary for so many more people than just the women it serves. We have these, like she says, meditations every morning, and some days they're open to the public. And I mean, you see people from all walks of life in there, and they're there because it's their sanctuary too. And I feel like if you don't, and everyone, there's no judgment, and people are sharing their stories, and it's encouraging others to share their stories and their pains and their joys, and we laugh and we cry, and then we laugh so hard that we cry, and it's hilarious and so fun and so hard all at the same time. But it really is a place where so many people, I think, have kind of found their home, including me. So I think, I don't know, I think that you're missing if you can't love without judgment and open your circle to everyone. You can't have that same sanctuary.
So Becca doesn't wear shoes a lot, and I think part of the reason is she believes that she's on holy ground.
She does.
Yeah.
And she is.
She is on holy ground. Tell me about the holy ground that is Thistle Farms, and what are when women come in, what are your prayers? What are your hopes for them?
Boy. So for 2000, since I work in PR marketing with Mary Stuart also, so part of my job is to keep up with the accurate things that goes on. And so the statistics for 2015 for Thistle Farms was we brought in 12 new workers to come work at Thistle Farms, new women, And then we also, the Thistle Farms residential part, we brought in 17 new residents. And you talking about a magnificent feeling of joy that my sisters can find the same hope, love, and peace that I found. And I mean, that's what I enjoy, seeing the new faces with broken hearts, the same story, the same trauma, but I also know that through their journey, that they will find the same healing. And so it's something about doing something for other people that when I go to bed each night, I feel good. I feel good. I can sleep well because I know each day I say, God, use me. And that's exactly what he does. I love being with people just like me because we're no different. I don't care about the color, the background, the age. We're human beings, and we are children of God, and we are called to serve one another. The end.
Amen.
Go for it.
So I want,
Sorry.
that's all right. We're,
Got
Like
excited.
the end.
yeah. So since y'all are all here to tell us the story, but also, why don't you tell us about these products that you have here today? First, say something about the Magdalene community and how that got started, and then how
Sure.
the products employ women, and tell us about the products that you have today.
Okay, I'll do it really quick. So about 20 years ago, we started the residential communities, and it's just 2 years free, no authority in the house, and we started with 1 house and 5 women. Our statistics last year is we served about 700 women, 30 in residence counseling and advocacy work and referral work for many others. We have over 100 women on the waiting list. About 4 years into it, we realized that we really needed a social enterprise. They weren't called social enterprises 15 years ago, but that's what it was. And we wanted to make healing products that were about the body so that we could remember that we are bodies and that part of our spiritual life was to be healthy in our bodies, mind, and spirits, to love all those parts of ourselves. So we started with oils and candles. And, when we came in November of 2014, Chip had a dinner for us. And my husband, Marcus Hummond, and I came and we sang songs. And this community gave us a grant for $10,000. And did they know about that?
They do now.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's great. It's great.
Yay! And it's perfect that it was Mary Stuart's whole, department that she is a part of with Anika, because what it is that you can get people to give $10,000 to help a resident come off the street. It costs $16,000 to house 1 resident for 1 year. So it's really hard to go to people and get them to say, a community, and say, we want a grant for $10,000 for marketing. And it was marketing our geranium product. We have a lot of stuff with geranium. It comes from Rwanda, a group of women survivors from the genocide that we've been working with since 2008. You guys did that, and it turned around and generated $80,000 in sales this year, our biggest sales ever. And it has to do with Anika, it has to do with Mary Stuart, and it has to do with y'all, again, with the idea that you take a little bit of money with a lot of hope in a huge community, in a marketing plan, and you can help change a whole community, not just in Nashville, Tennessee, not just in Charlotte, but in Kigali, Rwanda, and it was huge. And so we have tons of products, and they're exactly what you need on this bitter, cold, skim will chap kind of days with, what's the next holiday?
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. Oh my God, buy a love product. And you would be done with it. So that's all I got to say on it. You guys, that's it.
The end.
The end. What are you going to say?
I think I would say we constantly have people coming in and saying, how can I help? How can I help? I want to be involved. And you wouldn't think that a candle or a lotion is very powerful. But when you think about it, every candle or lotion or body butter that's taken off the shelf, a new one has to be made. And that means one more woman is employed. That's another hour. That might be another woman off the waiting list into an open bed. I think that's something that's different about Thistle Farms is people constantly wondering how you can help. That really does make such a difference. And it's how we keep the doors open, how we run and make money and do our thing.
Do you see? Go ahead, Anika.
I just want to give one shout out. We have a lot of wonderful books up there written by our own Becca Stevens, and it's amazing. I don't know if y'all know, but Becca does not receive a paycheck from Thistle Farms. And so she writes these magnificent books, and all the proceeds that come from the book goes directly back into Thistle Farms. You talk about a selfless act. But I have enjoyed reading her books, and it is so eye-opening and soul-searching and hope-filling. I just encourage that everybody in here purchase a book up there by the Reverend Becca Stevens. It's a life-changing experience.
So do you see this cycle of love, bringing women in to a community of love, giving them jobs so they can make income that creates products that goes back into the system, that brings more women off the street into employment, into love, into reclaiming their dignity? That is the spirituality of hope. The spirituality of hope begins in darkness. It shifts when a person is loved and embraced, when they reclaim their dignity and their hope, when they find community, and then through their act of love, they're able to contribute forward out of their own pain a recognition that other people need to be loved too. It's a beautiful cycle.
You're amazing, Chip. That's really said it well. That helped me see. Thank you.
Well, you taught me that.
Oh, I thought you just taught me that.
Well,
I loved it. It was said really, really well.
Well,
Y'all
thank
are
you.
lucky to have him.
Yes.
well, yes. Thank you. So, I want to encourage you to go upstairs and to clear out all these products. Let's have nothing left.
Please.
And then with these products that you have, when you use them, I want you to say a prayer and to remember who made them. And then to think about who, by you purchasing these products, you may be helping in response to that. Will you pray for us, Becca?
Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for this family gathered. Thank you for this community at Christ Church. Thank you for Chip, for Anika, for Mary Stuart, for Jovita, for Lori, for Tim, for the whole community gathered. Thank you for all the brokenness and all the compassion in our lives that have led us into this space, for all that we remember and all that we forget. Fill us up with hope and then send us back into the world to love it again and again and again until we get it right. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.